The afternoon sun hung low over Riverside Park, casting long shadows across the training field where Officer Marcus Roberts had drilled his K-9 partner through the same routines 1,000 times before. Rex, a 4-year-old German Shepherd with a flawless service record, had never shown aggression toward a civilian in his entire career, not once, not ever. Until the moment everything Marcus thought he knew about his partner shattered in the space of 3 seconds. One moment, Rex sat perfectly at heel, ears forward, watching Marcus set up the next exercise. The next moment, the dog exploded into motion without command, without warning, launching himself across 15 feet of grass with a speed that made Marcus's blood turn to ice. The target was a child. 8-year-old Emma Wilson barely had time to look up from the book she'd been pretending to read before 75 pounds of muscle and fur slammed into her small frame, driving her backward off the bench and onto the ground. Her scream split the air. Her book tumbled into the grass. Rex's jaws closed around her arm, and Marcus felt his entire world tilt sideways. "Rex! Off! Off!" Marcus's voice cracked as he sprinted toward them, his hand already reaching for his radio, his mind racing through impossible choices. His partner had just attacked a child, a little girl who had done nothing, said nothing, threatened no one. The same little girl who had been watching their training sessions for weeks with quiet, careful eyes. The same girl who had slowly, painfully become something like a fixture in their daily routine. And now Rex was on top of her, holding her down while she struggled and cried, and Marcus's radio hit the grass as he reached them. His hands found Rex's collar, his training kicking in even as his heart hammered against his ribs. "Release! Rex! Release now!" The dog's ears flattened, but he didn't let go. His body remained rigid, protective, positioned over Emma in a way that suddenly didn't look like an attack at all. It looked like a pin, a hold, the kind of maneuver Rex used on suspects trying to flee. But Emma wasn't a suspect. She was a terrified third grader who came to the park every single day to watch them train. The fabric of Emma's sleeve tore as Marcus finally managed to pull Rex back, and in that moment, everything changed. The long-sleeve shirt she always wore, even in the July heat, gave way under Rex's careful grip. Not a bite. A grip. And beneath the torn cotton, Marcus saw something that made his stomach drop and his breath catch, and his hands freeze on Rex's collar. Bruises. Dark, mottled bruises that covered her forearm in layers of purple and yellow and green, showing different stages of healing, showing repeated injury. And between the bruises, puncture marks. Deep, infected puncture marks that wept and oozed, surrounded by skin that looked angry and hot and swollen. The smell hit Marcus a second later. The unmistakable scent of infection that Rex must have detected from across the field. The smell that had triggered every protective instinct in the dog's body. Emma's sobs dissolved into gasping breaths as she clutched her exposed arm to her chest, her eyes wide with something far worse than fear of the dog. It was the look of a secret suddenly ripped open, the look of a child who had been hiding something terrible and had just run out of places to hide. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. Only small, broken sounds that made Marcus's chest ache. "Emma!" Marcus kept his voice soft, kept Rex at his side, even as the dog strained forward, whining deep in his throat. "Emma, I need you to stay right there, okay? I need to call someone who can help you." "No!" The word burst out of her with desperate force. "No, please, you can't. You can't tell anyone, please, Officer Marcus, please." Tears streamed down her face, cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks. "It'll get worse if you tell. It always gets worse." Before Marcus could respond, before he could process what she'd just said, A woman's voice cut across the park. "Emma! Emma! Where are you?" The voice carried an edge of panic, sharp and high and wrong somehow. Marcus had seen Emma's mother exactly twice in the 3 weeks the girl had been coming to watch them train. She never stayed, never sat on the bench with her daughter, never waved or smiled or showed any interest in what Emma found so fascinating about the K9 drills. But this voice was different, younger, scared in a way that had nothing to do with a dog tackling a child. The woman came running across the grass, her sandals slapping against the ground, her sundress bright and out of place against the darkening sky. She wasn't Emma's mother. Marcus knew that instantly, even before Emma's face went pale and her whole body went rigid. The woman was younger, maybe late 20s, with the same dark hair as Emma, but eyes that darted everywhere, landing on the torn sleeve and the exposed arm and Rex's alert posture. "Oh, God!" The woman breathed, skidding to a stop 3 feet away. "Oh, God, Emma! Your arm? Did the dog?" But her eyes told a different story. She already knew what had made those marks. She'd known for a while. And the way her hands shook, the way she looked over her shoulder toward the parking lot, the way her voice dropped to almost a whisper when she spoke again. "We need to go. Right now. We need to go home before—" Rex growled, low and steady and unmistakable. The dog moved between Emma and the woman, and Marcus's hand tightened on the radio he'd picked back up from the grass. Everything in his gut screamed that if he let them leave, if he let this woman take Emma away from this park right now, something far worse than a torn sleeve waited on the other side of that parking lot. Marcus's fingers closed around the radio, but he didn't lift it yet. His eyes stayed locked on the woman's face, reading every micro-expression, every tell that his years on the force had taught him to recognize. Fear, guilt, desperation, and beneath it all, shame so deep it seemed to hollow her out from the inside. "I'm Officer Roberts with Riverside PD," he said, keeping his voice level, keeping his body between Emma and the parking lot. "I need to understand what's happening here. Emma's arm is badly infected. Those wounds need immediate medical attention." The woman's hands twisted together, knuckles going white. "I'm Jessica, Emma's aunt. I've been taking care of her for the past few months while her mom is—" She swallowed hard, the lie dying on her tongue before it could fully form. "Please, officer, I can explain everything, but not here. Not in front of her. Can I just take her home and I'll bring her to the hospital myself? I promise. No." Marcus's voice was gentle but absolute. "I can't let you do that." He watched Jessica's face crumple, watched her take a half step back like she might run, and then freeze as Rex shifted his weight, ears forward. "Jessica, I need you to tell me the truth right now. Who hurt Emma?" The question hung in the evening air between them. Emma had gone completely still, curled in on herself on the grass, cradling her infected arm. Her eyes moved between Marcus and her aunt, wide and wet and waiting. Waiting to see if the truth would finally come out, or if the carefully constructed silence that had protected her for months would hold for just a little longer. Jessica's breath hitched. Once. Twice. Then the words came tumbling out in a rush. "He told me she fell. 2 months ago, he said she fell off her bike, and the neighbor's dog bit her. And I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe it so badly because if I didn't believe it, then I'd have to." Her voice broke. "I'd have to admit what he was doing. What he'd been doing since Karen left." Marcus felt ice slide down his spine. "Who is he, Jessica?" "Brian. Karen's boyfriend. He moved in last spring, and she got a job offer in Seattle. and she left Emma with him, with us. She thought it would just be for a few weeks while she got settled. But then the weeks turned into months, and Brian, Jessica's eyes filled with tears that spilled over and ran down her cheeks. He drinks. And when he drinks, he gets mean. And Emma, she's so quiet, she never causes trouble. But nothing she does is ever good enough for him. Nothing is ever right. Emma made a small sound, barely more than a whimper. Marcus glanced down at her and saw the way she'd pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself as small as possible. The same way she'd been sitting on that bench every single afternoon for 3 weeks. Small, quiet, invisible, trying so hard not to be noticed, not to take up space, not to give anyone a reason to hurt her. Rex took a single step toward Emma, his body language shifting from alert to protective, and Marcus gave him the hand signal for comfort approach. The dog moved slowly, carefully, until he was close enough for Emma to reach out if she wanted to. She didn't. Not yet. But her eyes tracked Rex's movement, and something in her face softened just slightly. "The bite marks," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady, even as rage coiled hot and tight in his chest. "Those are from a dog?" Jessica nodded, then shook her head, then covered her face with her hands. "I don't know. Brian said it was the neighbor's pit bull, but the neighbor doesn't have a pit bull. The neighbor has a chihuahua. And the marks? They're wrong. They're too big and too deep, and they're in too many places." She lowered her hands, and her eyes were raw. "I took her to urgent care 3 weeks ago. I lied and said I was her mother. They cleaned the wounds and gave her antibiotics and told me to bring her back if it didn't improve, but Brian wouldn't let me take her again. He said people would ask questions. He said if I told anyone, if I brought police or social services into it, he'd say I was the one who hurt her, that I was unstable, that I was trying to frame him." Marcus's thumb hovered over the radio call button. Every second that passed was a second Emma spent in pain, a second the infection spread deeper into her bloodstream. But he needed to know, needed to understand the full picture before patrol cars and paramedics descended and the situation became chaos. "How bad is it at home, Jessica? Tell me the truth." Jessica's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She sleeps in my room now. I lock the door at night. But when I'm at work..." She looked at Emma, and the guilt in her eyes was suffocating. "When I'm at work, she's alone with him, and I come home and there are new bruises, new marks. She stopped eating last week, stopped talking, just sat in the corner and stared at nothing, and I kept telling myself I'd figure out what to do, I'd get her away from him. I just needed a little more time to plan. But you ran out of time." Marcus finished the sentence for her, his eyes on Emma's arm, on the angry red streaks radiating from the infected wounds. Sepsis. Rex had smelled sepsis starting to take hold in her body. Another few days and... He didn't let himself finish that thought. He pressed the button on his radio, and his voice came out calm and clear and professional, even though his hands wanted to shake. "Dispatch. This is Unit 7. I need paramedics and a supervisor to Riverside Park immediately. I have a juvenile victim with severe injuries requiring emergency medical transport and a possible child abuse situation. Also requesting social services response." Emma's sob cut through the static of the dispatcher's acknowledgement. "Please don't make me go back there. Please, I'll be good. I promise I'll be so good this time." Marcus dropped to one knee beside Emma, his hand finding Rex's shoulder to keep the dog steady. The words came out before he could think them through, before protocol could tell him to keep his distance and wait for the professionals. "You don't have to be good, Emma. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault." The paramedics arrived within 7 minutes, their ambulance rolling across the grass with lights flashing, but sirens silent. Marcus had requested the quiet approach, knowing that Emma was already terrified enough without adding more chaos to the situation. 2 EMTs emerged. a woman with kind eyes and a younger man who took one look at Emma's arm and immediately reached for his equipment bag. "Hey there, sweetheart," the female paramedic said, her voice soft as she knelt in the grass. "My name's Rachel. Can you show me your arm? I promise we're going to help you feel better." Emma's eyes darted to Marcus, then to Rex, then back to Rachel. Her whole body trembled, but she slowly, very slowly, extended her infected arm. Rachel's professional mask slipped for just a fraction of a second when she saw the full extent of the damage. The puncture wounds had become abscesses, hot and swollen and leaking fluid that stained the torn sleeve. The red streaks running up Emma's arm toward her shoulder were unmistakable signs of blood poisoning. "Okay, honey," Rachel said, her voice remaining steady even as her hands moved with increased urgency. "We're going to clean this up and get you to the hospital right away. You're going to be just fine." But her eyes met Marcus's over Emma's head, and the message was clear. Another day or two, maybe less, and they would have been too late. The infection had already entered her bloodstream. Septic shock could have followed within hours. The younger EMT wrapped a blood pressure cuff around Emma's good arm while Rachel carefully cleaned the visible wounds with sterile solution. Emma whimpered but didn't pull away, her free hand reaching out, not toward Jessica, not toward Marcus, but toward Rex. The dog moved forward immediately, pressing his head under her small palm, letting her fingers curl into his fur. "That's Rex," Marcus said quietly. "He knew you were sick, Emma. He could smell the infection in your arm. That's why he knocked you down. He wasn't trying to hurt you. He was trying to show me that you needed help." Emma's fingers tightened in Rex's fur, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "He knew?" "He knew." Marcus watched the way Rex held perfectly still for her, the way the dog's dark eyes tracked every movement the paramedics made, ready to intervene if Emma showed any sign of distress. Dogs can smell things we can't: infections, diseases, fear. They know when something's wrong. Rex has been watching you for weeks. I thought he was just curious about why you came to the park every day, but now I understand. He could smell that you were sick. He was worried about you. Rachel finished bandaging the arm with temporary dressings, then looked at Jessica. "We need to transport her now. Are you riding with us?" Jessica nodded, her face pale. Yes. She started to reach for Emma, then stopped, her hand hovering in the air between them. "Emmy, I'm so sorry. I should have done this weeks ago. Ma'am," Rachel interrupted gently but firmly. "We need to go. You can talk in the ambulance." She helped Emma to her feet, keeping a steadying hand on the girl's shoulder. Emma swayed slightly, and Marcus realized with a sick twist in his gut that she was probably running a fever. Probably had been running a fever for days while trying to act normal, trying not to cause trouble, trying to be good enough that no one would hurt her again. A patrol car pulled up behind the ambulance, and Marcus's sergeant emerged, his expression already grave. Marcus had worked with Sergeant Williams for 6 years, and the man had seen every kind of ugly that humans could inflict on each other. But when Williams looked at Emma's small form being guided toward the ambulance, at the infected arm carefully cradled against her chest, something hard and angry flickered across his face. Marcus gave him a quick rundown of the situation while the paramedics loaded Emma into the ambulance. Jessica climbed in after her, and through the open doors Marcus could see Emma reaching back toward the grass, toward Rex, her mouth forming words he couldn't hear. Rex whined, pulling against his lead, and Marcus made a decision that probably violated a dozen departmental policies. "Hold on," he called to Rachel. "Give us just 1 second." He walked Rex to the ambulance doors, and the dog immediately stretched up, putting his front paws on the bumper so he could see inside. Emma's face transformed. Not quite a smile, but something close. something that looked like hope trying to remember how to exist. "He'll come visit you," Marcus told her, his throat tight. "As soon as they say you're feeling better, Rex and I will come see you at the hospital. I promise." Emma nodded, her good hand reaching out one more time to touch Rex's head. "Thank you," she whispered. "Tell him thank you for saving me." "You can tell him yourself," Marcus said. "When we visit. Deal?" "Deal." The word came out small but clear, and then Rachel was closing the doors, and the ambulance was pulling away, carrying Emma towards safety and treatment, and a future that didn't involve hiding infected wounds under long sleeves in the summer heat. Sergeant Williams stood beside Marcus as they watched the ambulance disappear through the park gates. "The aunt gave me an address," he said. "Backup's already en route to pick up Brian Castellano. He's got priors. Assault, battery, drunk and disorderly. Nothing involving kids before, but—" He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Marcus's hand found Rex's head, his fingers working through the dog's fur. If Rex hadn't smelled the infection, but he did. Williams's voice was firm. "That's what he's trained for, to detect what humans miss, to protect when protection is needed." He looked down at Rex, at the dog who was still staring in the direction the ambulance had gone. "Good boy saved a life today." Marcus spent the next 2 hours coordinating with social services, filing reports, and providing statements to Williams and the detective who arrived to take over the case. By the time he and Rex finally left the park, the sun had set completely, leaving the training field dark and empty except for the distant glow of streetlights. Emma's book still lay in the grass where it had fallen, its pages fluttering in the evening breeze. Marcus picked it up. A worn copy of a fantasy novel about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals, and tucked it carefully into his patrol bag to return to her later. His phone rang at 9:30 that night, Williams's name flashing across the screen. Marcus answered on the first ring, Rex's ears perking up from where the dog rested on his bed in the corner of Marcus's apartment. "They picked up Castellano an hour ago," Williams said without preamble. "Found him at a bar 3 blocks from the house. He resisted arrest. They had to tackle him in the parking lot. He kept screaming that Jessica was lying, that the kid was making everything up for attention, that he never laid a hand on her." Marcus's jaw tightened. "What about evidence?" "Plenty." Williams's voice carried a dark satisfaction. "Detective Ramirez got a warrant for the house. Found a wooden bat in Castellano's bedroom closet with what looks like blood on the handle. Found Emma's bedroom, or what passed for it. A mattress on the floor in a storage room with no windows. No toys. No books, except the ones she apparently hid under the mattress. Jessica confirmed Emma wasn't allowed to leave that room when Castellano was home unless it was to do chores or go to school." Marcus closed his eyes, his free hand finding Rex's head as the dog padded over to lean against his leg. "And the bite marks?" "Not from a dog." Williams paused, and Marcus heard papers rustling in the background. "Ramirez talked to the ER doctor who examined Emma. The puncture patterns are consistent with human teeth. Castellano bit her. Multiple times. The worst wound on her forearm, the one that got infected, is at least 3 weeks old. The doctor said if we'd found her even 2 days later, she would have been in septic shock. Organ failure would have followed. Rex literally saved her life by exposing that wound when he did." The words settled into Marcus's chest, heavy and sharp. 3 weeks. Emma had been walking around with a festering human bite wound for 3 weeks, coming to the park every single day to watch K9 training, sitting on that bench in her long sleeves, trying to be invisible while her body slowly poisoned itself. And Rex had known, had sensed it, had finally decided that protocol and training mattered less than stopping a child from dying in silence. "What's the charge?" Marcus asked. "Multiple counts of aggravated child abuse, false imprisonment, and assault with intent to cause great bodily harm. District Attorney is reviewing for additional charges. Jessica's cooperating fully. She's not being charged yet." Social services is evaluating her situation, but right now she's the only family Emma has unless they can track down the mother in Seattle. Williams exhaled slowly. The girl's going to need surgery. They have to debride the infected tissue and put her on IV antibiotics for at least a week. After that, foster care probably. Therapy. A long road. Marcus stared at the book on his coffee table. At the girl on the cover who looked a little like Emma, standing brave and defiant with a wolf at her side. She asked me to tell Rex thank you, he said quietly. I told her she could tell him herself when we visit. Then you better keep that promise, Roberts. Williams's voice softened just slightly. She's at Riverside Memorial, 4th floor pediatric wing. They're keeping her sedated tonight while the antibiotics start working. But tomorrow she's gonna wake up in a strange place, hurting and scared, and probably wondering if anyone actually gives a damn about what happens to her next. The line went quiet for a moment, just the faint sound of Williams breathing on the other end. Then, your dog did good work today, real good work. Make sure you tell him that. I will. Marcus looked down at Rex, at the dark eyes watching him with that uncanny understanding that still surprised him even after 4 years of partnership. Thank you, Sergeant. Thank the dog. Williams hung up. Marcus sat on the floor beside Rex, his back against the couch, his hand working through the thick fur at the dog's neck. You knew, he said softly. You knew for weeks, didn't you? You could smell the infection every time she came to the park. You tried to tell me in every way you could think of. The whining, the circling, the way you watched her instead of focusing on drills. And I kept thinking you were just distracted. I kept correcting you for breaking focus. Rex leaned into his touch, a soft whine escaping his throat. Not distressed. Just present. Just listening the way dogs do, with their whole body and attention. I'm sorry I didn't understand sooner, Marcus continued, his voice rougher now. But you didn't give up on her. Even when I told you to heal, even when I pulled you back, you kept trying. And when you finally had enough, when you knew time was running out, you did what you had to do. You probably saved her life, Rex. You know that? The dog's tail thumped once against the floor. Marcus pressed his forehead against Rex's shoulder and let himself breathe. Just breathe. For the first time since that moment in the park, when everything had shattered and reformed into something he was still trying to understand. His partner had stopped being a tool, stopped being a resource, and had become something more. Something that chose protection over protocol. Something that valued life over obedience. Something that would do it again, Marcus knew, without hesitation or doubt. And tomorrow, when they walked into that hospital room, when Emma opened her eyes and saw Rex standing beside her bed, maybe then she would start to believe that not everyone who was supposed to protect her had failed. That someone, even if that someone had 4 legs and a badge collar, had seen her suffering and had refused to look away. Marcus arrived at Riverside Memorial just after 9 the next morning, Rex at his side, in full uniform, badge collar gleaming under the fluorescent lights, leash clipped to the harness that identified him as an active-duty K-9 officer. The pediatric wing smelled like antiseptic and fear, and something sweeter underneath. The scent of juice boxes and cafeteria pancakes, and efforts to make a hospital feel less like the terrifying place it actually was for sick children. Rex's ears swiveled forward as they stepped off the elevator, his nose working overtime to process the 1,000 competing smells that lived in a place where bodies fought to heal themselves. The nurse at the desk looked up from her computer screen, her expression shifting from routine professional courtesy to something warmer when she saw Rex. "You must be Officer Roberts," she said. "Emma's been asking about you since she woke up this morning. Well, asking about your partner specifically." She smiled. "Room 412, down the hall on the left. Fair warning, she's pretty groggy from the pain medication. and she's got a lot of IV lines, so the dog will need to be gentle. He will be, Marcus promised, because Rex had done hospital visits before, had learned to move carefully around fragile patients and medical equipment. But this visit felt different. This wasn't a routine community outreach call. This was personal. This was following through on a promise made to a terrified child who had every reason not to trust promises anymore. Emma's room was small and bright, afternoon sunlight streaming through the window and catching on the IV pole beside her bed. She lay propped up on pillows, her infected arm wrapped in clean white bandages and elevated on a foam support. Her good arm connected to 2 different IV lines that fed antibiotics and fluids into her small body. She looked even tinier in the hospital bed, a little girl swallowed by white sheets and medical machinery, but her eyes were open, alert, watching the door like she'd been waiting. Those eyes locked onto Rex the moment Marcus stepped through the doorway, and something that might have been joy flickered across Emma's pale face. "You came," she whispered, her voice hoarse and thin. "You really came." "I promised." Marcus kept his voice quiet, kept his movements slow as he guided Rex to the side of the bed. "How are you feeling?" Emma's gaze never left Rex. "My arm hurts. The doctor said I have to have surgery tomorrow to clean out the bad stuff. Aunt Jessica was here earlier, but she had to go talk to some people about where I'm going to live now." Her voice wobbled on that last part, fear creeping in around the edges. "They said I can't go back to the house. They said Brian got arrested and I don't have to see him anymore." "That's right." Marcus moved a chair closer to the bed, positioning it so Emma could see both him and Rex clearly. "Brian's in jail. He can't hurt you anymore. And a lot of people are working very hard to figure out the best place for you to be. Somewhere safe. Somewhere you won't have to hide or be afraid." Emma's good hand crept toward the edge of the mattress, fingers reaching down toward where Rex stood, patient and still, his dark eyes fixed on her face with that intense focus he reserved for people who needed protection. "Can I?" She looked at Marcus, uncertainty written in every line of her body. "Can I pet him?" Of course. Marcus gave Rex the hand signal for gentle approach, and the dog moved closer, carefully avoiding the IV lines until his head was level with the edge of the bed. Emma's fingers sank into his fur, tentative at first, then with more confidence as Rex held perfectly still for her. A small sound escaped her throat. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Something caught between relief and grief. "He really knew I was sick?" Emma asked, her hand moving in slow strokes down Rex's neck. "That's why he knocked me down?" Marcus nodded. Dogs have an incredible sense of smell. Rex could detect the infection in your arm, could smell that it was getting worse. He'd been trying to tell me for weeks that something was wrong, but I didn't understand what he was saying. When he finally knocked you down and tore your sleeve, that was his way of making me see what he'd been seeing all along. He broke protocol to help you, Emma. He chose you over his training. Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks, but she kept petting Rex, kept her fingers buried in his fur like he was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting under her feet. "I came to the park every day because you made me feel safe," she whispered. "Watching you train Rex, watching the way you talked to him and the way he listened. It was the only time I didn't feel scared. The only time I could pretend I was somewhere else." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest, something that had nothing to do with police work or protocol, or the professional distance he was supposed to maintain. "You don't have to pretend anymore," he said quietly. "You're safe now. Really safe." Emma leaned forward as much as the IV lines would allow, pressing her forehead against the top of Rex's head. The dog made a soft sound, not quite a whine, not quite a growl, something protective and ancient that transcended training and duty. Emma's shoulders shook with silent sobs, and Rex held still for her, letting her cry into his fur, letting her release weeks of terror and pain and loneliness into the solid warmth of his presence. They stayed like that for a long time, a broken child and a police dog who had chosen protection over obedience. While Marcus watched and understood that some kinds of saving couldn't be measured in arrests or case files or commendations. Some kinds of saving happened in hospital rooms where a little girl learned to trust again, one careful touch at a time. Where a dog who could have walked away, who could have followed commands and ignored instinct, had instead decided that one life, one small hurting life, mattered more than rules. "Thank you," Emma finally whispered against Rex's fur. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Rex's tail moved once, a gentle thump against the hospital floor. Marcus reached out and rested his hand on his partner's shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of the dog's breathing, the absolute certainty in every line of his body. "He never would have," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion he didn't try to hide. "That's not who he is. He protects people who need protecting. And he'll keep doing it. Every single day, for as long as he can." Emma lifted her head, her eyes red but clear, and looked at Marcus with something that might have been the beginning of hope. "Will you come back? After the surgery?" I don't want to be alone." "We'll come back," Marcus promised. "As many times as they'll let us through that door. You're not alone anymore, Emma. Not now. Not ever again." Outside the window, the city moved on with its ordinary rhythms. Traffic and sirens and people going about their lives. But inside room 412, something extraordinary had taken root. A promise kept, a trust beginning to rebuild, and a police dog standing guard over a child who had finally found someone who refused to look away.